Hello, everyone. Today, my project is about the Mahayana Buddhism branch. My name is James Ho. Introduction to the Mahayana branch and origins. Mahayana Buddhism is known as the Great Vehicle and it's practiced in China, Indonesia, Tibet, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and Vietnam. The Mahayana uses the same text as the Theravada tradition, such as the Pali Canon, and they have the sutras written in Sanskrit as well as many other new sutras written in Sanskrit and translated from Chinese into their respective languages. The beginning of the Mahayana Buddhism is said to arise from 100 BCE and 100 CE in India because of the differences about the Buddhist doctrines, monastic practices, monastic discipline, and the presence of the Buddha after his death and the nature of enlightenment. So basically, you can kind of see a divide between the monastic community and the average monastic monks and nuns with certain beliefs such as the rules, certain disciplines that they need to take in order to punish some monks or nuns, as well as the presence of the Buddha, which people believed in to be really great after his death because in certain sutras they discuss that the Buddha is omnipresent and that he is always here, that he didn't actually die. And then bodhisattvas were held to a high degree since they are great beings who sought their enlightenment in order to save countless sentient beings from suffering. So in the Theravada school, you have the idea of arhatship, which is the enlightened one or a great one because they follow sort of the old traditional rules that the monks had back then. And compared to Mahayana, we believe in bodhisattvas, or in Vietnamese, we call them Bồ and they're compassionate and merciful beings who halt their own enlightenment in order to save other sentient beings because there's compassionate. There's a lot of great suffering out there in this world, and not all beings are free from samsara, which is known as the cycle of life and death. And there has been a large emphasis on ritualistic practices such as sutra chanting, meditation, and the discouragement of attachment. Because as we know, attachment itself is impermanent. The things that we crave, the things that we desire, none of it really would matter in the end because death is at everyone's door. Yeah, it sounds kind of gloomy, but that's just the facts. Some more origins. As the Mahayana branch spread throughout India, it was influenced by other Buddhist schools in India and around India and is incorporated with religious traditions. For example, Taoism, Confucianism, and other forms of Hinduism have been incorporated into the Mahayana branch. And there are other Mahayana branches which include Pure Land Zen and Vajrayana, which is known as Tibetan Buddhism. So Pure Land Buddhism, strictly, they believe in Amitabha Buddha, which means infinite life, and his 48 vows that he did to create his own Buddha land. And a lot of Buddhists, including my family, believe in the Pure Land belief that Amitabha will save us from this world as we know it, and at our juncture of death, we will become a lotus flower inside his Pure Land known as Sukhavati. And you have Zen Buddhism, which focuses on meditation, calming the mind, realizing or coming at sense with the mind. So it's a lot of like meditative practices. There's even like a tea ceremony in Zen Buddhism. And Vajrayana, which some people call it Tibetan Buddhism because it's kind of like the main branch in Tibetan Buddhism, and that focuses on the tantric practices where you visualize a deity, and then you enter these different rituals and these different meditative states to visualize this deity, and it's kind of like the quicker way people say to achieve enlightenment in this life. And the main founder of the Mahayana branch is said to be a monk named Nagarjuna, along with people such as Asanga, Vasabandhu, and the early Mahayana texts collected together called the Prajna Paramita translates to the wisdom of perfection, and other early sutras, including the Sadahamapundarika, which is known as the Lotus Sutra. It's also depicted in the Mahayana branch has significance uh, influence into Western philosophy and Western religion and ethical practices. So, there's a lot of Western scholars from Great Britain back then that looked at the scriptures and a lot of Mahayana texts, as well as the Pali Canon, and probably took some of its beliefs and incorporated it into their own kind of philosophy as well. There have been countless number of sutras that have been incorporated, written, copied, and worshipped in the Mahayana branch. So these sutras usually first are the Pali Canon, which is the language of Pali, and then later on the Mahayana sutras consisted of being in Sanskrit, and then they're translated into Chinese, and then into the other respective countries such as Korea, Vietnam, and Japan. So the Mahayana spread throughout the East with the influence of monks and kings. By the 2nd century CE, it spread to China. After that, it spread more to the east and southeast of Asia. The vast amount of kings that upheld the Mahayana practice were the Kushanas and the Guptas, and the Palas in the India. In China, you have the Han and Tang dynasties. Nagarjuna is depicted to bring the Lotus Sutras from the Nagas, or people call it the serpent realm or the land of the dragons, maybe, in a Buddhist myth, and is also responsible for the Heart Sutra. Nagarjuna also emphasized emptiness, which is known as sunyata. So the idea of emptiness is things at its core are emptiness, that things in this world are impermanent itself, and that we shouldn't focus on like the duality that is in nature and life, and that everything at its core has emptiness. And that's kind of like a great idea that's been emphasized. So here we have a picture with the spread of Buddhism. So Mahayana Buddhism is known as the Northern Buddhism because it kind of spread outside of India and made its way into Mongolia and then down into China and then later down into Vietnam. And then you have the Theravada, they call it the Southern School because it spread from India into down to Burma, to Sri Lanka, and then eventually to Laos and Thailand and those countries. So the Mahayana Buddhist traditions and rituals. The traditions and rituals have been incorporated into their respective countries and traditions. Mostly the Mahayana branches are incorporated with Chinese philosophies and cultures, like I mentioned before, Taoism, Confucianism, and a lot of the kind of like the deity cultures of China has also been incorporated into the Chinese Buddhism of Mahayana branch. And the rituals include reciting mantras, sutras, or the Buddhist scriptures, and to worship Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Meditation is also a big focus in the Mahayana branch because, well, in any Buddhism branch, but especially in the Mahayana branch, you have schools such as Zen Buddhism that focuses on meditation. And the importance of the lay community brings together a sense of family and togetherness. So in the Mahayana branch, there's a big depiction of the monastic community, and there's a lot of like festivals, rituals that bring together the Buddhist community. And there are rituals for the deceased, and the purpose and the process of a person passing away. Excuse me. Rituals have various gongs, bells, and drums, and various temples have statues for Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, as well as other various deities from the Buddhist pantheon. So kind of like one thing that I would take, and I noticed when I attended a Lendung camp, it's a Vietnamese youth camp that I attended to a few summers ago. And then on one of the Sundays, I attended to a Theravada school branch where they had this monk, and then he was chanting in the Pali language, and then he only had one bell. It's really interesting because compared to the Mahayana branch, there's a lot more instruments. There's drums, there's different gongs, bells, and different things involved in the different rituals. And compared to the Theravada school, which is known as School of the Elders, is more like it's more old school. It's more to the books, so to say. It's just a gong, and then they read mostly sutras in the Pali Canon and in the Pali language. So Mahayana Buddhism believes there's suffering that arises from hatred, greed, and ignorance. And then the Four Noble Truths told by the Buddha and the Eightfold Paths. So the Four Noble Truths is that life is suffering. The causes of suffering is from our hatred, our greed, and our ignorance. And the way out of that suffering is to stop the hatred, to stop the greed, to stop the ignorance. And the path of it is the Eightfold Path, which teach us that we can develop like the right view, the right mindset, effort, the right concentration, to develop kind of like wisdom and compassion in order to break away from life and death and suffering in general. So we have the Bodhisattva path, which focuses on wisdom, prajna, compassion, and which means karuna. And the Bodhisattva path is that, you know, we have to cultivate what we've learned throughout our lives in order to help those around us and to have compassion. And from there we gain wisdom, and from that wisdom we can sort of cut away the ignorance that arises throughout our life. And then there's a belief that there's a true reality as emptiness. So sunyata, again, the idea of emptiness, that things at its intrinsic nature have an emptiness to them. So that we shouldn't that the ideas and stuff are all illusions. Everything that we see in this world are illusions, and that things have a true emptiness nature. And that all sentient beings have a potential for Buddhahood and have Buddha nature inside them. So the idea is that everyone has a Buddhahood, or can attain Buddhahood and have Buddha nature inside them, is kind of like a popular idea in the Mahayana branch. And then we also have the doctrine of the Trikaya, or the Buddha having three bodies, the Dharmakaya, which is like a body that goes beyond this realm in reality. Then Sambhogakaya is kind of like the body between, and then Nirmkaya is the physical body. So the historical Buddha has the Nirmanakaya, which is his physical body, and the Dharmakaya, which people can say can be like kind of like an omnipresent being, so to say. And the six beliefs, the six paramitas, referred to as the transcendent perfection. So the first perfection is generosity, dana. So when we're generous, we have to um, make donations, give to charity, and then we're just doing acts of kindness without looking for anything in return. And then you have discipline or morality, sila, which is having the right mindset, the right ideals to carry out your life and to further stay away from suffering. To have patience is, you know, to be patient and to just wait. You know, you don't have to get whatever you want like right away. You have to be patient and just wait, and just, you know, everyone's time will come. And then you have the effort, the diligence, the courage, or the virya. And with that, it means like to have kind of like the courage to do things, the effort, the right mindset, and just the right efforts to carry on with certain actions. And then you have concentration or meditation, or dhyana or yana. And with that, it's like concentrating on whatever you're doing, and meditating, which is engaging with calm thoughts, focusing on your breath, and also like trying to dissect like the thoughts running through your head, to come at peace with them, to recognize them, to befriend them, and then just kind of like dissect what you're thinking, and then kind of like the interactions that you have throughout life. And then wisdom. And then practicing all these things, you'll develop wisdom, which is prajna. And then the sutras relevant to the Mahayana Buddhism. You have the Prajna Paramita, which is the perfection of transcendent wisdom sutra. And then this sutra speaks of the nature of reality and discusses emptiness. And a famous quote from it is, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." This sutra includes the Heart Sutra and the Diamond Sutra. The Sadadharma Pundarikas, or which is known as the Lotus Sutra, and that sutra is very popular in East Asia and discusses about upaya, which is skillful means, and the idea of the universal Buddha nature. So the universal Buddha nature is that every being has Buddha nature to be kind, to be compassionate, to be looking for others, to looking out for others, and also skillful means. So skillful means is that uh, the Buddha is a great teacher that has various stories and tales and different things and avenues for people to learn. So skillful means is that the Buddha will appear to a person in their time when they're ready to learn about the truth of reality and then the Buddha nature. And then in the Lotus Sutra, there's a story about a great king, and then he had his children in a burning house, and then he was yelling at them to come out the burning house, but they didn't know because they're too busy like playing inside the house. And then so what he did was he told them that there was a ox cart and various other animal carts waiting outside of the house, and um, that the children finally came out. So the meaning of this parable or story is that the father, which is the Buddha, is trying to teach the children, which is us or other sentient beings, that life is suffering, that there's lots of suffering in life, and then that the toys or he rewarded them outside is basically his teachings. The ox cart and then the jewels all represent like the Dharma and the different paths to escape from suffering. And the burning house is a representation of um, life is suffering. There's a lot of suffering and dukkha everywhere that we go. And then we have the Pure Land Sutra, and this sutra is about Amitabha Buddha and his 48 vows that he wanted to create a Buddha land to free sentient beings from suffering. So there is a very big sect of Buddhists, and particularly in China, Japan, Vietnam, that believe in the Pure Land Sutra and worship Amitabha Buddha, because it's kind of difficult for everyone to engage in like monastic practices, because everyone's life is mundane, very busy. It's like it's very difficult. So with the belief and the prayers of the Pure Land Sutra, they believe that if you recite Amitabha's name, he will therefore at the juncture of your death come and rescue you and then take you to his Western Pure Land. And then we have the different various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the Mahayana view. So we have Siddhartha Gautama, which is the historical Buddha, also referred to as Shakyamuni Buddha, and his name is Bonsu Thitkamoni in Vietnamese. And he's born in Lumbini Garden. And then throughout his life, after when he was at a young age, he saw the four sides of an old man, a sick man, a dead man, and a monk. And then he found out that life is full of suffering. And that's the actual truth of what he was trying to discover. So to how to free someone from suffering. So he sat under the Bodhi tree in deep meditation and attained enlightenment or nirvana. And he gave his first teaching in Sarnath Deer Park to five of his disciples um, or five of his monk friends along his way. And then he passed away in Kushinagar, where he attained Parinirvana or ultimate enlightenment. And then you have Amitabha Buddha or Amitayus, meaning infinite life or infinite light, and the Buddha of immeasurable light and life. He's known as Amitofu in Chinese, Aida fuck in Vietnamese, and then he made 48 vows to create a Buddha land in the West, which is known as Sukhavati in Sanskrit. And then when he was alive, he was a king named Dharmakara who gave up his royal life and to pursue spiritual enlightenment. Because what people say is that Amitabha Buddha is kind of like another reflection or another side of Shakyamuni Buddha, because the Dharmakara, he also saw the four sides of life: a dead man, a sick, a old, and a monk. And then the three sutras that go with Amitabha Buddha is known as the Pure Land Sutras. There's three sutras about visualizing him, the things in the Pure Land. And then you have Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, which is Guanyin in Chinese, Guanam in Vietnamese. And then this is the Bodhisattva of infinite compassion and mercy. Also, people can say that it's he or she is the Lord that looks down. And some statues depicting him or her to having 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands. And then we can see her alongside Amitabha Buddha, along with Mahastambrata Dhammaprata Bodhisattva, which is the Bodhisattva of power of wisdom and the rival of the great strength, and is commonly seen in the Pure Land Trinity. So on the right side here in this figure, we have Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, or Guanyin or Guanam in Vietnamese. And then in the middle, you have Amitabha Buddha. And then on the left, you have Mahastambrata Bodhisattva, which is known as the Ai Te Chi Botak in Vietnamese. And then this is common Buddha and Bodhisattva trinity that you will see practiced in the Mahayana Buddhist branch, because it is believed that this Buddha and these Bodhisattvas will come to a person at the juncture of their death to rescue them and bring them to the Pure Land known as Sukhavati, the Western Pure Land of Bliss. And then you have the medicine Buddha, Vaishara Guru, or Yaksu Phak in Vietnamese. And then he made 12 vows to help sentient beings and create a Buddha land or a pure land in the East. And then there's the Medicine Buddha Sutra. So people pray to this Buddha for like spiritual, mental, and physical healing. So when they're in great times of distress or just in general, they'll pray and then use his mantras for like spiritual healing. And then it's also depicted that I read that there's another Buddha in another Eastern land. So there's two Eastern Buddha lands. And that is depicted that when people are born in the Buddha lands, that they can travel to various Buddha lands and then gain knowledge and the Dharma from each Buddha that resides in that specific Buddha land. And then we have some Buddhist holidays. This Buddhist holiday that I'm speaking of is called Vesak, or the Buddha's birthday, and is known as Lei Phak Dang in Vietnamese. And then it's to celebrate the Buddha's birthday when he was born in Lumbini, that he took 7 steps and pointed up to the sky. And then he said that he is the world honored one, that he's here basically to teach everyone about the sufferings of life and then kind of like how you can get away from it. And then in this ceremony, you bathe the baby Buddha with water and flowers. I personally have been to a few Vesak festivals when I was younger. My father took me, and then there we would make prayers, burn incense, bring flowers, and just bathe the baby Buddha. There would be flowers and water right there, and then you take a ladle and just bathe the baby Buddha. And then some personal experiences with Buddhism. I've grown up traditionally in a Mahayana household, so we believe in the historical Buddha of Shakyamuni, the Amitabha Buddha, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, which is Guanam, and various other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So there's actually a huge like pantheon of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the Mahayana branch, and it would literally take days to like list them all, and then kind of like explain each and every one of them. And then the sutras my family reads are in Vietnamese, but I would actually like to learn more both in English and Vietnamese. And the main temple that I attend to with my family is the Vietnam Buddhist Center. So a few years ago, this Buddhist center is well known because it has a big a big statue of Guanam out in the front. And then the main temple actually broke down because it was made of mostly wood. And then I went to go see the aftermath of the temple. And then I was surprised because there's a statue of the Shakyamuni Buddha in the middle, and then that statue was like untouched. There was like rubble and everything around that statue, but the statue is still untouched. And then the picture here is the Buddhist center now that's been rebuilt at it. I took there when I went there recently. I took a picture of this. And then I used to attend a Buddhist youth group when I was younger called Yadin Phật tử Huỳnh Quang. So Yadin Phật tử means Buddhist family. And then Huỳnh Quang is kind of like the name of the organization. And so, yeah, other personal experiences. I've been to a few Buddhist funerals. I know it's kind of morbid and sad, but for my dad, my aunt, and my cousin, and then yeah, uh, it was like interesting to really look at kind of like our beliefs and the rituals that go on without or with when the person is passing away. And yeah, it's actually, it's interesting to see, even though it was pretty sad experience for me to go through it. And see what else. Oh yeah, and yeah, and then at this Buddhist center, also in the back, there's an altar where there's pictures of deceased members of your family, and then I met pictures there of some of my grandparents from my father's side, as well as a picture of my father, my aunt, my cousin, and then I think another aunt of mine. And yeah, so in conclusion to my personal experience and observations of how the Mahayana Buddhism is, it is important to understand that the Mahayana Buddhist traditions and beliefs help elevate the Buddhist community to believe that it is a group effort to achieve enlightenment. So it's called the greater vehicle because there's like lots of avenues and different techniques that a person can engage in order to pursue and achieve like spiritual enlightenment. In the Mahayana meaning, the great vehicle in Sanskrit embodies the idea that we're not alone in the spiritual journey towards enlightenment because we can receive help from various Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, as well as help from the Buddhist lay community. Like I said again, it's a group effort, like the Bodhisattva path is like um kind of like halting our own enlightenment so we can help sentient beings around us with compassion and wisdom. And then this branch of Buddhism emphasizes compassion and wisdom and is popular in China, Vietnam, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Tibet, and even here in America. The Mahayana tradition focuses on the sutras, the important parts of the secular life, because the importance of the Buddha's Dharma can give us knowledge and knowledge towards enlightenment. The Dharma and sutras are depicted as a blueprint or a map that can lead one towards enlightenment. The traditions have a community aspect to them because the power of chanting and the Dharma, as well as community rituals, can give the community a spiritual uplifting. The worship of various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas also is emphasized throughout the Mahayana branches and can help aid with spiritual healing. Thank you, everyone. Here's my bibliography pages. And yep, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.